The moment our fellow geeks, dweebs, nerds, and other unfortunates have been fervently waiting for has finally arrived. It's time for TMI, Confessionals of the Nerd Kind. And now, your hosts, Jeff Nerfherder Chandler, Jim Kaiju Baker, and Christina Yojimbo Henry. You can continue. And now, let's get on with the show. Here is TMI.
I know it's a late but happy 4th of July. It's early for us, but it's late for anybody listening.
Yes, all our holiday wishes always come a week late. So
After the fact.
Yeah. We should think about this, the week previous sometimes.
Yeah, I know. We should actually have a little more foresight, but we don't.
4th of July usually means big movie weekend. Yeah. I guess you can consider Minions like a major tentpole release, but that's pretty much in terms of franchises anyway. Although we have this weekend, but we're not covering Minions today. We are diving back into horror this week.
And
we're covering a movie that's been teased for quite some time now. As a matter of fact, the release date was pushed back from the beginning of the year, in January, February. Apparently, this movie has been doing so well with test audiences. Blumhouse decided to push it back to a summer release. And what we're talking about
Blumhouse
is Black Phone.
Was that a smart move? I don't know. I guess
we'll see.
Out.
Well, time will tell. It's it's all box office numbers. It doesn't matter what we think.
From what I understand, their box office numbers are pretty good. Part of it is that Blumhouse, it's a place that attracts like serious artists, right? Because they basically say, we'll give you this small budget and then you can do what you want and you have the final cut over your movie, which is
not always a good thing.
I mean, I would argue in this case it is.
Well, as an artist, yes.
But in general, and that's sort of like the thing that they do. And so this has a relatively small budget. And like a lot of horror films that have small budgets, they give pretty good return on investment.
Yeah, from what I was reading, it's about almost at 60 million on a between 16 and 18 million budget. So,
yeah.
So, wow. When you look at that number, 60 million, it's not like the mega number that a Marvel movie gets, but you have to put it relative to its budget.
I was actually listening to an interview with Scott Derrickson, who is the director of this film, and he was saying just about the only things that post-COVID seem to draw people into theaters are big superhero tentpoles and little horror movies.
Little
and that's
horror.
About it. I would argue that studios aren't doing a great job of releasing mid-budget movies, and you guys have heard me talk about this before, like where did the mid-budget adult thriller go? But that's a conversation for another day.
Along with Black Phone, we're going for a theme here, as we always try to do, with phone calls and killers calling and whatnot. So we are revisiting the Scream franchise. Now, you may think you've bled that bone dry long ago. No, we haven't. We've only talked about 2 Scream movies.
We got to talk more after this.
And by extension, we have talked, a little bit on this one. We're dedicating the second half of our episode to this one, Scream 4. And this may be arguable, some may think this is the best of the Scream franchise.
Pinnacle? This is the pinnacle of the entire franchise?
Well, I'm not saying that, but it could be argued.
You're saying
could be argued.
Well, I guess you have to stick around to the end of the episode to find out. Do we want to do a little bit of news?
Sure,
it's a holiday week.
News.
Sure.
All right. I just want to send out happy belated birthdays to Mel Brooks, who is 96. This man just just keeps going.
He should be given like some kind of national treasure award for
He
Young
is a national
Frankenstein.
treasure.
I mean, just make it official. Give him like the badge of courage, like in Wizard of Oz. Some kind of a ceremony. I want
An actual giant key.
perhaps.
What do you do with that? When people get those keys, like, what do you do with them?
I've never received one, so I don't know.
Well, neither have I. That's why I'm asking.
I
guess
think
we'll
the
never
only
know.
time you could actually use one of those giant keys is on Skull Island and Jurassic Park.
There you go. Otherwise, it just hangs on your keychain.
Those are the only times that would be worth getting a giant key. But
Well, if it's to the
that's
city, isn't there like a big gate to let you in? Like everyone else stay outside.
I'd like to think so. Yeah, that would be great if all our major
Right.
cities had a giant
always-
gate. That would be helpful in the zombie apocalypse as well.
That would be, as long as you get out of your pocket.
Or very hurtful since you're now locked in with the zombies. But
Oh, no. All right, Jim, you just mentioned Minions. Have you seen this?
no, I have not seen this.
You did not see it. Apparently, there's a TikTok meme where people are showing up wearing suits to this movie. My son went
Suits?
last night, and he says pretty much everyone there are wearing 3-piece suits.
Now, who made this
Jackets,
up?
Ties. It's a TikTok meme, I guess. I don't know. It just means that we're officially old because I actually did research this morning and I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't understand it. But I was curious because I know that your son wanted to go see it. So
Well, we did see Elvis this weekend, and Minions was
where was
playing.
he?
I didn't
Graceland?
see any suits. Well, I saw the film Elvis.
Oh, okay. It's a big
Yeah,
difference.
Minions playing multiple theaters. Didn't see anybody in suits.
Weird. And then I guess we'll just move on from that. I also
Wait
know
a second.
Jim-
Wait,
What?
you can't just move on from that.
I don't know
Why?
anything. I was curious. I wanted to know if you had gone to see it and if people were showing up in suits because
Is it
my
like
son-
the Gru suit? Is like
No,
a Nehru
like-
collar?
No, like actually dressing up in shirt and tie and showing up to these movies. It's a whole TikTok thing. It's a whole social media thing. I don't get it. I was hoping you had some insight.
No, it's annoying me already. So let's
So
move
when
on
you
to the
do
next
go
subject.
and you see these people, you'll be like, oh, you're the people? You're those people?
Yeah, and they're going to sit right next to me, knowing my luck as well.
Yes, Ben said they clapped throughout the entire movie.
Hmm.
He didn't get it, so whatever. I also know that both of you are a big Disney park enthusiasts, and I don't know if you know about this, but there is a Disney Parks Around the World trip. Have you heard this?
Yes,
This
I
is-
have heard about this.
Okay.
I listened to the podcast Disney Dish with Len Testa and Jim Hill.
Okay.
And Len Testa, he's the statistics guy behind the unofficial guide, and Jim Hill is like a journalist who's like kind of a Disney insider.
Mhm.
And they were discussing this on their show in the context of Disney's seeming tone deaf behavior in relation to the current state of the economy.
Well, this is mind-boggling because apparently, right, this is not something. So this is a 24-day adventure in which you will board a private jet and you will be going to 31 locations, which include Florida, California, France, and Tokyo parks, Eiffel Tower, and the pyramids of Giza. You will get 68 meals.
Are they owned by Disney now as well?
Yes, Disney owns everything now. Mickey's waiting for you inside the pyramid.
Trademarked.
There are only 75 slots available, and it immediately sold out in pre-sale at $110,000 per person.
Immediately sold out.
Immediately.
How many of these
75
trips?
slots. The only one. This is the only trip that they've released right now. But apparently the backlog in the wait line, the queue, is significant. So Disney being
Really?
a money grabbing.
The thing that gets me is that I'm sure people are thinking, well, this is just rich people, but probably it's not. Probably these are people who like took out a second mortgage on their homes.
People
to
can't
do,
even
like,
afford to pay for gas to get to work, and you're charging $110,000 for this extra. Exactly what you said. It is a little bit tone deaf, but there are people out there with this money that are willing to plunk it down.
Well,
So
we also
will be-
hear about these people that book the new Star Wars hotel and then think better of it. I would love to see those numbers as to how many people, how many guests, if they're filling that hotel, that new
From what I
Galactic Cruiser
understand, they're
hotel.
not. From what I understand, it's
Good.
It's
Bring
kinda
that
hurting.
price down.
Yeah, you got to. So yeah, apparently Disney is recession proof. Whatever. Meal, 31-day location, private jet. I'll do that instead. Who needs to go to college? So I thought that was interesting. So I'm assuming that neither one of you have booked your flights yet.
No.
No. It's bad
110,000.
enough. I am taking a Disney trip later this year, and just one location is bad enough.
It's already costing you.
Yeah,
110,000.
it's already.
Oh man. All right. So that's interesting. And I'm sure that they will be releasing more dates because it looks like the demand is there. We will not be there. If anybody listening goes, let us know how it is.
I'd love to see Disney Sea, that park in Tokyo. That's probably one of my bucket list things to do.
That's on our list to do when we go to Tokyo, which looks like now will probably be next year.
Yeah.
Japan is slowly reopening to tourists. They are doing a very gradual process, but when they fully reopen and they have no restrictions, then we're going to go and take our now put off for almost 4 years trip.
Yeah, wow.
Speaking of which, Jim, did you hear about now the plans for Universal Epic?
I've been keeping an eye on that, and I've seen the supposed map. I don't know how accurate it is, but how it shows how these different new lands break down.
Looks like Nintendo Land's going to be in there. So
yeah.
You may not have to take Harrison overseas for that one.
Well, I have no qualms about that because they're putting the Universal Monsters Land down there.
Right.
So I'd go just for that.
Is it all going to be in black and white?
But looking at this thing, of course, it's the smallest of all the new lands in this park. So
bummer. Yeah. If you go to Legoland, just watch where you step. Sorry. All right. Final news item. I'm sorry. Come on. We can't end our news item without talking about Nicolas Cage, because it looks like Nick Cage's Holy Trinity is making a second coming. Adam Wingard has confirmed that Face Off 2 is in development.
With him attached?
With him attached. I haven't seen anything about John Travolta, but this is apparently not the only Nick Cage property. We are also talking The Rock 2, and even more importantly, Con Air in space.
What?
Okay.
In space, baby.
When is he going to have the time to make all these movies?
What?
Now,
He's making a movie every other day.
I want Pedro Pascal to be in all these movies as well.
That would
I don't
be
think
great.
that you can separate them at this point.
Well, apparently it sounds like every major actor that was attached to Con Air, whether they lived or died, their characters, is interested in coming back.
Including Malkovich?
Yes.
Just going to pretend that like the end of the movie didn't happen or
here's
something?
here's Wingard's, like, he addressed that. He goes, you can solve any problem in Hollywood, whether it's through large amounts of money or CGI. There's always a way. Hollywood will find a way to put anybody they want back in the film, whether alive or dead. They can usually solve those problems one way or the other.
Okay.
So throw the storyline out there. Even Cusack has voiced his interest.
Con Air in space.
Con Air in space. Used to be taboo. Now everyone wants to do. I guess Fast and Furious did this on one of their last movies, and so now it's cool again.
So they'll crash the space shuttle into the Hard Rock Cafe at the...
Yeah. Well, maybe it'll be the Hard Rock on the moon.
Yeah, maybe.
They're being shuttled to some moon colony. Maybe there's a Moonfall tie-in.
I would just like him to make Face Off first. 2 out of the 3 will inevitably go the way of the dinosaur. I'm sure it will never get made. So do Face Off first. Yeah, concentrate on Face Off.
They are confirming that Face Off 2 is in development. So
in development is a very vague term because
it's happening.
I have had
officially. You've been in development for
a book of mine optioned that has been in development, and then it just suddenly was not in development.
I thought we weren't supposed to talk about that.
I'm not mentioning the title.
Oh, okay. All right. There's what, 6 guesses? Anybody out there want to guess?
6 guesses. I've written 17 books.
17? I only have 6. Jeez,
you only have 6 of them? Is that what you're saying?
Hey, in 20 years, once these things drop, you'll be like Kate Bush. Suddenly, the world will be about
Bush.
Christina Henry.
That's
Well, you
right.
can't turn on the radio without Kate Bush showing up again.
It's so funny to me because in high school, I loved Kate Bush. And I think The Sensual World, actually, it was like my favorite album by her. And I think I listened to it, 500 times back when we had cassettes, and you'd be
What?
rewinding like your
Yeah, that's
favorite
right.
song, trying to set it up perfectly so you could listen to it again over and over.
You know what? I would just like to know why Max doesn't listen to the rest of the album.
Yeah, it's a good album.
That's the only song. They could only afford one song. Over and over.
I got to keep rewinding this. Just let it play. You'll find that the rest of it is good too.
Yeah.
It's true.
It was like my in-laws. Whenever they went out in their Corvette, they would just listen to Bat Out of Hell over and over again. But at least that was the whole album. That wasn't just one song. Still, too much of a good thing. Ruins it.
Well, I mean, like you said, it's about that they didn't option the whole album, right? They optioned just the one song. But
Just the one song.
from that album, like
That
Cloud,
everybody
I
knew.
actually like Cloud Busting better.
That's the one that I'm most familiar with from that album. Not because I've not listened to the album, but because that's the first. I remember the video with Donald Sutherland. And
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. I love Cloud Busting. I love Under Ice. I love Hollow Earth. There's actually a
Under
lot of
Ice
good-
is great.
I love a
Mother
lot of
Stands
songs.
for Comfort.
Yeah,
This is now turned into a Kate Bush
I know. Kate Bush
review
Appreciation
podcast.
Hour.
Yeah.
We love you, Kate. Meanwhile, I don't know what the hell they're talking about.
Jump on the bandwagon, Jeff. Catch up with the rest of the world.
All right. I'll go seek out that
I'll send you a
Okay.
copy of Kate Bush's The Whole Story.
The whole story, yeah.
Ooh.
I don't know. We've mentioned before that Christina and I know each other because we used to work in the same bookstore.
When
Surprise, surprise.
Children. Yeah.
And so I worked there before you started, for
Mhm.
at least a couple of years. And I remember, and I don't know if this survived into your employment there, but we had a cassette player and there was, really dodgy speakers in the four corners of the store.
Mhm.
And the whole story was on repeat, I remember, from the day that I started. And whenever I used to log into work, Babushka always seemed to be the song that was playing. And because of that, Wuthering Heights, my favorite version of Wuthering Heights is the one on The Whole Story and not the
Agreed.
original album.
I actually
Yeah.
liked the Whole Story version better. And the reason why Kate Bush re-recorded that song was because she felt that her voice was not mature enough when she sang it the first time, when she originally recorded it. And I agree with her. I think the Whole Story version is better. I actually
Yeah.
prefer that one.
Let's veer away from this becoming a Kate Bush podcast.
Oh no, I just had that. I just hashtag Kate Bush. All right. That is all the news I have. And apparently that's your music review for this week.
Yes.
That's right.
Thank you very much.
It's been a long time, so please indulge us. I guess next week we're going to be all about that, though. But that's here nor there
Music.
for this episode.
Bush Nerd is our new hashtag, by the way. The black phone. You guys have been dangling this over my freaking head for months now. And I finally saw it.
And it was worth it, right?
I loved it. I loved it.
It was good.
I cannot stop.
Hey.
I knew it.
I know. Let's go. I know.
This is going to be another invisible man conversation.
Okay. I just want to say I called this. When my husband and I walked out of the theater, I was like, Jeff is going to unexpectedly like this movie and Jim is not. This is exactly what happened.
Don't get me wrong. I can nitpick the living hell out of this movie.
Yes.
There are so many inexplicable things
You
that
see,
happen.
Yeah,
And
that's
I
exactly
just
my
choose-
point. Exactly.
And yes, I'm going to agree with you all the way around. And yet when I walked out, I came home and I raved not only to my wife, but to my son. And then I went to work and I was telling everybody, you got to go see this movie.
You see, my thing is that when a movie exists in the real world, I need a certain level of plausibility. And I didn't
It
get
was the 70s.
It was
Does
the
that
70s.
count?
Yeah. Cops were inept completely.
Right. Let's rely on little psychic girls and inept
So
cops.
I'll just
All
let
right,
you
okay.
guys go. I do not want to, rain on your parade.
No, listen, not at all. Because I'm probably going to agree with 3/4 of what you have to say or what you're going to point out. But it didn't diminish my
And again,
enjoyment of this.
Whatever I say, this is just my opinion. I'm not saying it's a bad movie or a good movie. It's just my opinion. And that's
Yeah,
all these
that's all
episodes
of
ever
ours.
are. I don't want to
You know,
offend anyone.
Someone's out there agreeing with you wholeheartedly, 100%,
Yeah.
and going, these other two are idiots. Very
Before
long
we
trail,
start
by the
talking
way.
about this, have either of you guys read the short story?
No, but I did find out today that Joe Hill is Stephen King's son.
What?
Yes,
No, I didn't.
I knew that.
I
Also-
know you knew it. As I figured, I beat you to the punch. Either that, or you could say it, and I'll be like, "What?"
Oh my gosh. Now, talking about the bookstore we used to work at, whoever King's publisher was at the time in the late 80s, early 90s. Viking, you know, when
Yeah.
The Dark Half was coming out and books like that. So I remember Viking had a contest for bookstores, and I think that Stephen King was the ultimate judge. Like, you had to make the best window display
Ooh.
of one of his books. And Joe King, as he was known at the time, was going to Vassar and would come into our store. I don't know if this was before you or not, but
I thought that Owen did.
I think they both did.
Okay.
We would whisper to each other, we've got to get him to be in our display and we will
Just
win.
stand there. That's my son. Winner.
But nobody ever had the guts to ask him.
We're ballsy enough.
I mean, I remember the time Mary Tyler Moore came into the store.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Mhm.
Rob Zombie, he came in once. Tim
don't think I was
Burton
there
came
for
in
that.
once.
You did tell me that story. I
Yeah.
heard that one.
Well, anyway, so Jim, have you read the story, The Black Phone?
No, I have read Joe Hill, but I have not read The Black Phone. And interesting, because a lot of the reviews I read lauded this for being true to the source material. And it's
Okay,
like not even talking about the movie itself. Oh, it's great. It's true to the source material.
Well, this is the interesting thing. So, of course, I dug out my copy. My copy of this book, actually, I'm going to show you guys. Obviously, people on the podcast can't see this, but this copy is so old, it has a border sticker on it.
Ooh.
Borders.
Does not exist anymore.
A little,
And
let's bow our heads for borders.
Is there a wall up around that now?
and I have the book. It's from the collection 20th Century Ghosts, which is Joe Hill's first collection. So I had not read this book, I think since it came out in paperback. And so I pulled it out and I read the story again. It's about a 20-page story. And I think that the film is true to the story in the sense that, like, it follows sort of the main beats of the story really well, but it is only a 20-page story. So you can see that they had a lot to fill in. They basically had to create a middle act that doesn't exist in the story. They had to fill in a lot. They filled in a lot of the relationship. In the short story, he has an older sister named Susanna. In the film, it's a younger sister named Gwen. I listened to an interview with Scott Derrickson, and he talked about how what he wanted to do to a certain extent was incorporate elements of his own childhood with this story. He said he did grow up. He was the youngest on a block that had 13 boys, and he was always bullied. He was always getting beaten up. He said there was violence in his home. So you can see how he sort of took those aspects and he creates this character of Finney, who is, a lot of the tension in the film comes from the fact that this is a very vulnerable kid.
Well, I would be too if I had Charles Manson as my father.
Yeah, no, this is the scarier aspect. Not even the grabber, the damn dad.
Like, how does this guy get a job? Shave. You look exactly like Charles Manson. All you're missing is the carving on your forehead.
Well, he hasn't gotten there yet. I will tell you that
that's like your father putting a Michael Myers mask on 24/7. Like, come on.
Yeah,
no, I was just going to point out this actor was driving me nuts the entire movie because I'm like, I know this guy. Like, who is this guy? Jim, do you know who this guy was?
He's
dad?
from Lost. Yeah.
He's from Lost. It's Faraday, Dr. Daniel Faraday from Lost. I lost all respect for him.
He's in Ravenous. That's how I know him.
Oh,
Yes. Ravenous.
okay. Yep, you're right. Jeremy Davies. Yeah, it was driving me nuts. I will also say
He was bearded in Ravenous, was he not?
Yeah, I think he was.
He was decidedly
beards.
less Manson-esque in Ravenous. He was completely Manson. And okay, I'll get off this kick now.
The short story Grabber is more clearly patterned on John Wayne Gacy. In the short story, he's a party clown. But the other thing is, I actually wanted to read you guys this little bit of the story, how Joe Hill describes him. And I think this is an interesting change they made for the film and appropriate when we talk about Ethan Hawke's performance and like the physicality that he brings to it. But Joe Hill described him in the book as he wasn't any kind of fat, but grotesquely fat. His head had been shaved to a glossy polish, and there were 2 plump folds of skin where his neck met the base of his skull. He wore a loud Hawaiian shirt, toucans nestled among hanging creepers, although it was too cool for short sleeves. Like the way he describes him, like immediately you think of Gacy, because Gacy was like a heavy guy, and he was party clown. Even the fact that the character in the book is fat is used against him because he can't move fast. And later when Finney tries to escape, he's able to like skip a dance away from him. And I think that in the film, the change that they made to just use Ethan Hawke as a performer and not try to make him look like the way he does in the book matters, because Ethan Hawke comes across much more physically intimidating to this kid, even when he's wearing sort of like these cardigans and things that are clearly meant to make him look non-threatening. The scene when you first see him at the
not count. Yeah, I was going to say, not counting the mask that he wears, he never takes off.
Now, in the book, does he wear a mask or no?
He does not, and that was another thing that they created for the film, which
is brilliant.
Which I thought was interesting, because the mask has different parts, so it's like they changed sort of according to the grabber's mood. But what I think it does for the performer is that Ethan Hawke, even his eyes are in shadow because of the way this mask is. So he can't really even use his eyes. It's like his face is a complete blank.
Yeah, so, but he uses that voice and his mannerisms.
And this may have been my mind playing tricks on me. And this isn't a criticism. This is actually a strength of the film, is that I could see Ethan Hawke in that mask. Now, I'm not sure if they modeled it after the build of his face, or if it was just his eyes. But I can see Ethan Hawke when I look at that mask.
Yeah, that's because you know who he is. If you're a little kid trapped in a basement,
I think it's creepy. More than that. I think it's like, more than that.
Are you Ethan Hawke? Like, that's what. Oh, you called me.
I thought
end of movie.
That in particular, the first scene when you see the grabber at the top of the stairs waiting for Finney, he doesn't have a shirt on, right? He looks sort of big and menacing, and he's holding the strap in his hand. He's wearing the mask. He's not moving. And that looks like a person who could really hurt you, who could
even
really
when he's just sitting in the chair, waiting for him.
And I think that one of the strengths of the film does have some drawbacks, but I think one of the strengths of the film is that it keeps the grabber as a monster to the kid. He doesn't try to explain his backstory, explain why he's like this. There are things that are implied, but they are not explicit. It's certainly implied that the grabber himself was a victim of abuse. I think that's a conclusion that you can draw when he talks about how the phone hasn't worked since he was a kid. This very specificity of the game, the quote unquote game that he plays, Naughty Boy, it just feels like something that's like abusive, that's been passed down. But I think that the strength of the film is that it does not try to explain him. It does not try to justify him. He's a monster, and he's a monster to this kid, right?
You know what's not implied is that he has a brother that lives with him 24/7.
An idiot, but this guy really is an idiot.
What's going on yet. He fashions himself as a master sleuth trying to figure out this murder. He lives with a guy that wears a scary mask 24/7, sits in the kitchen with a belt, shirtless. This brother doesn't appear to have a life outside this house, and they're not like locked apart.
What's
going on there?
Did he not know his brother owned the house next door? Or he's like, who are you making that eggs for?
Well,
why are you going to the basement all the time?
The brother's talking to him sometimes when he's going down the stairs. My stupid brother, I got to go up there. That was implied.
He does explain that the brother doesn't usually live with him.
But now he not normally, but he does for the entire time.
Right.
That Finney is down there.
But he's also coked up, obviously.
Yeah, and completely paranoid. All right. I'm off that now.
We will revisit that though. Don't worry.
I think, and again, that is an aspect of the story in the book, like that the brother showed up, and because the brother showed up, he couldn't kill in the book.
Then that would make me mad when I read the story as well, if I didn't even see this movie.
What do you mean your brother showed up?
But he also doesn't wear a mask. And in
Right.
the book, he doesn't bring him any
So
food
I
either.
think
He
if
just
I agree with you that they should keep this guy as a monster, like from the child's point of view, but
Yeah.
because there's a brother up there, there's a life going on up there. So it's not a mystery anymore.
And it's implied that he has a job, right? That the grabber has a job.
So if you're
At
going
one
to
point
tell
he
me
said-
these things, I think it would actually be more scary to see this guy like interacting on a normal level with people, because then you're thinking this guy's never going to be caught because he acts normal when he's out in the world. But no, he should have a billboard on his van saying
toucher,
child,
kid- right.
abductor. And the cops, they had black balloons at the site. First of all, who buys black balloons? And
Right, they
why
should've-
can't you trace
Why
who
can't you just
buys
go to
black
like the
balloons?
local party city and be like, all right, we're just going to wait here for someone to come and buy black balloons or helium.
Nah.
I love it. The shoes on the other foot this week. This all plays out really quick. And I love the fact that it's set in the 70s. The cinematographer did a fantastic job of cementing that time, and you talk about Derrickson, he's like, growing up in the 70s, and he was really kind of tapping into that stuff. And yeah, we had a lot more freedom as kids. The sister comes and goes. The dad's an absolute monster. He's more monstrous than the damn grabber. When he's beating, when he's handing out that corporal punishment to the daughter, it is in her performance. This little girl is phenomenal.
Yeah, and that's such an upsetting scene, but I think it's supposed to be, and then you're supposed to see the closeness of these siblings and their very, very bad situation. And I think that is one of the film's strengths. I think both of these young actors are amazing. I think they do. I think that their relationship feels real. I think they feel like a real brother and sister.
Madeline McGraw, she plays Gwenny.
Yeah.
Her character's name is?
Yeah, let's just talk. Gwen and Finney are not 1970s names, by the way. They sound like someone right out of the 90s. That doesn't sound like a normal name, but I loved her. I thought she was fantastic. And when her potty mouth opened up, I'm like, oh, this kid is...
I think she did have the best line in the movie, that you can't trust anybody that wants to marry Potsy.
Yeah.
That's a good life dictum, I think, right there.
See, and that's where they kind of, they leaned into the 70s without banging you over the head. We're like Stranger Things. It's like, oh, look, you're at a mall in the 80s now. Oh, this was like, the kids are watching Davey and Goliath. They're watching Emergency. It's just kind of like their world. You bring up Potsy. And I will tell you, this movie got an extra half bucket just because they included Sweet in their soundtrack.
We just heard that in Wonderstruck as well.
Yes.
One thing I would have liked from this film that I did appreciate was after the first time Finney answers the black phone, he was talking to Bruce Yamada,
Right.
who's a boy that he knows, at least superficially, they played baseball against one another. And after that, you see a little flashback of Bruce's life, like from the time he was a baby.
Yeah, these are interesting.
And I really, really liked this because it felt like it grounded Bruce as more than just a victim. It showed like something of his life. But then for the other boys, they didn't do that. They just showed their abductions. I wish that they had done flashbacks of their lives the same way they had with Bruce, so that you would have a grounding of these boys beyond their
especially
victimhood.
Robin, who was another great character. And this kid who plays Robin, Miguel Mora, this is his only IMDb credit.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to tell you right now, this is not the last time you're going to see this kid.
Mm-hmm.
You see, now this is another, I love
the
the two characters as well, but I think that they misstepped here because I think the movie opens strong, and I love that character of Bruce and especially that he was the first victim that you are aware of, and you see him, well, you don't see him get grabbed, but you see the beginnings of him getting grabbed. But because this could happen to anybody, the most popular kid on the baseball team, the jock. But I think, again, the plausibility issue comes in when you talk about Robin getting abducted, and then that psycho Billy from Stranger Things kid getting abducted. They didn't leave a mark on the grabber. Especially that kid who had the knife out with the other kid. They didn't fight back enough to maybe make him second guess what he was doing.
And you got to wonder how long in between these abductions are going on, because you're still allowing your kids to come and go. And, I'm going to go to Susie's house. And it just seemed like in that aspect, it was really rushed. That these abductions were happening, and yet they were already killed and buried by the time Finney was abducted. Are we talking days, weeks, months?
And he's got to carry a full body every time. Maybe he puts it in his van and he drives it over there, but still he's got to take it out and put it in. So he's got that threat of being seen every single time in a suburban neighborhood.
You can
say that it's implausible that the neighbors wouldn't notice the bodies, but John Wayne Gacy buried 30 boys under his house.
His house?
Right? And
he owned both houses, so technically his house.
And Dahmer, apparently his neighbors noticed the smell, but the police didn't think it was important enough to check in on that. So that kind of stuff doesn't bother me, because in the real world, stuff like that does happen.
That was just one of many other things that were going on here for me.
But the aspect of the phone, the whole conceit of the movie is that these dead boys are contacting Finney. And again, how long were they down there that they now have these clues to be able to give to him? Because you can't be down there for 2 days before he kills you. And you're like, oh, yeah, by the way, underneath that wall is a wire, or I carved this in over here.
But nobody dug the floor when they told them, there's a loose tile.
Weird. Or that, the refrigerator's on the other side of that wall if you just keep digging through. And I'm like, the porcelain would have been in.
How did he know that?
Porcelain is not stronger than concrete.
The other thing is that, and this, of course, you got to have a jump scare, right? So I don't belabor this too much, but why would Bruce try to scare him? Finny. Finn.
Sorry. I'll go back there. The grabber tells him at one point, scream all you want because I soundproof this myself. How do you test that? How do you test proof a sound room all by yourself? Do you go inside and yell and hope that no one hears you? But not only that, at one point, he's also told that the grabber can hear the phone. He just chooses not to believe it. And I'm like, but if you hear the phone ringing all the time, wouldn't you think that something is up? Second of all, if it's soundproof, how could he hear it? And why would this kid scream every time the door is open? He leaves that door open numerous times while he comes downstairs and gives him food, and he monologues.
Right. And
I'd be screaming.
But presumably he's doing it when Max isn't home. So.
And he didn't realize that the bars were missing off the window. Like there are
again, it's sort of implied a little bit. I think that he's distracted because Max is there, and also Finney isn't behaving the way he expects him to behave. Like when he leaves the door open, he expects him to come up the stairs.
Well, that's the game, right?
Yeah,
that's the naughty boy.
And then he doesn't do that because he gets the warning. Billy's the one who calls him the paper boy and says, "Don't go up the stairs." But one thing that I did like was how all the kids told him, do this. I tried to do this. To do this. And then in the end, he incorporates elements of all the other boys' failed plans to make his own to use his own ingenuity to make a trap. And I did like that they brought Robin back because I was very touched by their relationship.
Yeah, I did like this character a lot, Robin. Like
this tough kid who sort of looks out for the bullied kid, which I really, really appreciated.
I was generating a theory while I was watching this that Gwenny has these special powers that have been passed down from her mother, that she can see things in dreams and see the dead because she sees the boys when she's looking for the house that she saw in her dreams, all standing in front of the house, or actually between the two houses that are owned on the street. So is it Gwenny that's enabling Finn to hear the phone? Is it without her that he wouldn't be able to hear that? Because, he's also his mother's child. So maybe he's got some. Because
he did ask them, did the phone ring for you?
But it seems to be tied to her. So is she channeling this to allow him to hear these?
I want to see a whole series about this little girl sleuthing out crimes.
I don't know if it's her facilitating it. They obviously have a connection, but also I think it's just that their mom clearly had some kind of power. Both of the kids had some kind of,
because obviously this wouldn't have happened to the other kids. They're not talking to their previous victims, or they'd be the ones to get out.
They said straight up, the phone did not ring for me.
The grabber has a gift as well. He can hear it as well, but he chooses to ignore it, as Jeff said. So there's all sorts of psychic abilities going on here in these three people.
Like I said, because Finney is a very vulnerable character and he's in this terrifying situation. I think a lot of tension is generated from that. I did appreciate as a side note, Gwen in her Georgie outfit riding through the neighborhood in her yellow
Oh,
slicker
yeah, I
and red
think I caught
boots.
that as well. No red balloons coming out of the sewer, though.
Now, but when Finn gets picked up, he is actively worried about what's going on because seemingly half the kids in the school have already been abducted at this point. And he's into this guy that drives up in the black van.
Like,
he's oh yeah, I like magic. Then he comes up to the van. Are those black balloons in there?
Right.
I didn't think that at all. I felt that he was very hesitant.
Little boy?
You didn't see the smile on his face when he said, "Ooh, magic."
Sure,
and then this guy with like a white face paint on. So this is the only time besides the end where you almost see Ethan Hawke's full face.
Yeah.
And he's creeping out already because he's got like some kind of makeup on.
He dropped the groceries, so it's a Ted Bundy trick, right? So he comes toward him to try to help him. And then...
Is this like a how-to guide on how to abduct children? Is this what we're watching here?
But I felt that there was like some physical hesitation there where he was kind of like, do you need help? But he didn't fully approach him. He still stayed a few feet away.
I think once this is out, we need to hit that videotape and do a rewind on that scene because I was getting the feeling that he was kind of into this guy. Like, oh yeah, I like magic. And he got close enough to get grabbed. Let's put it that way.
To me, it felt like the smile was that nervous smile of like a kid who's not sure what's going on. I interpreted that scene completely differently. I actually thought he was pretty cautious in that scenario.
No, cautious to me would be turning around and walking in the other direction.
Running the other way.
The climax of the movie after Finn is helped along by all the previous victims, he tries this, he tries that, he tries each of their solutions, and then he combines them all into even with the dog that suddenly appears as like a huge devil dog at the end, like a big Rottweiler.
Good thing you got into the freezer.
Good thing you got into so even that figures into it. Robin tells him to fill up the phone with the dirt that he's been digging in the hole and teaches him how to dance back and forth in order to give the guy a good shot with the phone. And his brother kind of throws a wrench into those plans. So let's talk about the Max scene where he comes down and he starts to do his cocaine jabbering. Like, do you want to hear how I figured this out? And then suddenly, boom, you get an axe through the back of the head. Think if this guy cares so little about his brother, he could have done that at the beginning of the movie.
The minute he showed up.
Yeah.
Hey, can I stay here? Yeah, come on in. Whack.
And then he's like, well, you made me kill now he's upset. So now he's truly a naughty boy. And now things are going to go to the next level.
Max was annoying, by the way.
But I will say, Ethan Hawke is extremely threatening.
Oh, yeah.
In this part.
Yeah.
And they go to the dark places. He's not just like a kidnapping and killing. He is a pedophile. And they strongly, without coming out and saying
but see, that's the thing,
it
right?
is
You
strongly
never really
suggested.
See him do anything other than kill his brother with an axe.
Well, that's the thing. You don't need to see it.
No, I know.
You just need the threat of it. And that's when that scene, when the boy, it was Billy, right? With the paper boy, he had the bike lock.
Yeah.
It was his lock that was on the door. And he's the one who told Finney, you're not playing the game. And he's like, what game is that? It's like the, naughty boy. It's like, he beats you. And then he likes the part that comes after. When he says the part that comes after, like, what that means. You don't need it to be any more explicit than that.
Ice cream?
Again, coming back to Bruce, when he tells him at the beginning, because Bruce gets a hit off of him because Finney is the pitcher in the softball game, says, you got a mint, your arm is mint, is what he says. And then that line, because it's a very memorable line, if there's a simpatico between the two.
Because nobody uses the word mint anymore.
Finney almost strikes him out on the third pitch. Then he gets the home run off him. He says, your arm is mint. And of course that comes back. And that's like a very Signs Joaquin Phoenix
I was just going to say
moment.
Joaquin Phoenix, swing away, Merle.
Yeah,
exactly. Listen, we can sit here and nitpick this, but I really did enjoy this. I was wholeheartedly invested. And you see a body bag come out, but you don't know for sure if it was him or if it was the brother. So we could be having a black phone too.
There is a sequel in development. If this was a hit, Derrickson has an idea for a sequel, prequel, maybe. I don't know.
As long as they bring back Gwen. I mean,
I think that the fact that this came from a short story meant they had an advantage and a disadvantage. They had an advantage because there's a lot of space for them to develop in between, the spaces of that short story. The flip side of it is it kind of shows that there might not necessarily have been enough of this story to make into an hour and a half movie, but I think that there's enough tension developed like to keep you engaged.
Oh yeah, I was engaged. I will give it that. I also just wanted to point out that in the backstory, and I keep forgetting this kid's name. I'm calling him Billy from Stranger Things, the metalhead that gets abducted, and you see him get distracted from his pinball game in his flashback, and he's in the convenience store, and you look at the magazine rack, and
the
it's
Starlogs.
filled. I'm like, what is this? A Starlog library? This place? It's like
magazine.
Every issue of Starlog ever, and that's all they sell is Starlog magazine.
That's a store
but I still liked it. I still liked it.
And I made a note too. I'm like, oh, I hope Jim caught that.
Yeah, I did.
Oh man. I did like the new logo treatment, the Blumhouse logo treatment at the beginning. That's new, right?
It is. It's as far as I know, it's the first time I've seen that. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's funny, Ethan Hawke originally turned this down because he didn't want to be typecast
as a bad guy.
But then he said to himself, well, I'm in my 50s now. This might be my future from this point on, of being a villain. Yeah.
He's getting a little bit of a resurgence with Moon Knight and whatnot.
This is, goes back to what I was talking about last week when we were off air. It's like, we've literally watched him grow up. The first time I ever saw him was in Explorers with River Phoenix.
Wow.
I think he was like 14 or 15 years old in that movie. He's just a little baby. And then, of course, you see him in Dead Poets Society. And then,
Reality Bites.
He was known, as like sort of this Gen X, kind of icon because he did Before Sunrise and he did Reality Bites and he did all these kind of independent movies in the 90s. And now suddenly here he is, like, the scary child killer.
He did a damn good job.
Yeah, I thought, just the changes of his voice, like where his voice would go really high, his voice would go really low.
Yeah, outside of his eyes and his voice and his physicality, he doesn't really have he doesn't have much else to work with. And he does a fantastic job.
When he is down there menacing Finn, he does the Christian Bale Batman. And then at one scene, Max says something and his voice changes to like, go to sleep, Max. I'll be back. So, all right. How many buckets out of 5 would we give to the Black Phone?
I am ringing in a solid 4 buckets.
Ooh, 4
buckets.
Wow.
I enjoyed the hell out of this. I really did. And even when I came, because my wife wanted nothing to do with it, she actually left the room yesterday when I was watching Scream 4. She's like, and I'm like, I liked it. She's like, what? I said, I really liked it.
4.
Yeah,
I am incredulous.
You guys have warped me. Although I want Finney to take that phone back up and just whack his dad once with it. Would have been a nice cathartic moment.
I'm going to say 3.5. I also did like this. And I appreciate that not everything in this film worked, but I was engaged when I was watching it and I felt the tension. Like I said, I think that there's sort of just an inherent vulnerability when you're watching a movie about a kid in danger, and I think it's hard for your emotions not to get engaged. So they definitely had me while I was there for the hour and a half.
My lips were pursed during most of the hour and a half and arms crossed. But I'm not going to go as low as Invisible Man. I think that still sets the bar for me in terms of this podcast, but not too much higher just because of the plausibility issues that I had with it. I'm going to go 2.5.
I knew you wouldn't like it. And I walked out, I was like, he won't like it.
There you go. So, man, listen, it makes for a fun discussion.
Yes, it does.
Sometimes when we all gush about a movie, it's like...
But let's go to the concession stand, and we're going to come back with Scream 4.
How much shock can you take? It will haunt you forever. From the depths of evil comes the diabolic killer of beautiful women. The vampire's coffin. See a vampire's body stolen from its tomb. A psycho killer removes the stakes so the vampire can again prey on beautiful women. It's in the vampire's coffin. And to complete a double night of horror, a monstrous nightmare of terror turned loose in a fight to the death. The robot versus the Aztec mummy. We dare you to see them, but don't come alone.
When it comes to candy, I'll bet every young man has a secret wish to own a candy store filled to his heart's desire with smooth, rich chocolates, creamy nougats, and chewy caramels. Well, whatever your favorite is, you'll find the Refreshment Center's a heaven of delectable candy just waiting for you to take your pick. So treat yourself to some delicious candy from the Refreshment Center. There's time between shows. Stop in right now.
Okay, we're back. And the third sequel to the original 1996 classic is entitled, surprise, Scream 4. Actually, it was Scream with the 4 inside the word Scream, if you want to really get technical. So perhaps it was just called Scream.
Reform.
So, and this was the direct predecessor to the recent Scream movie, which is not called Scream 5, also just Scream. I watched all Scream movies leading up to the 2022 movie. And I might even say this about the original. I know how good the original is. You know, that's not lost on me. Scream 4 may be my favorite of the franchise.
So I'm the only one who saw this when it came out in theater. Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
Yeah, I did not.
Yeah, and it was not a huge success, you know, in terms of the other Screams. You know, it did make more.
And this was 2011.
than its budget.
It wasn't that long ago, right?
Well, I mean, it's 11 years ago.
Yeah, it was a long time.
It was Wes Craven's last film. He died of brain cancer in 2015. And the interesting thing about this film, I listened to an interview with Kevin Williamson on Mick Garris's Postmortem podcast. I'm sure you know who Mick Garris is.
Yes.
He's like a horror legend. And he said that it's hard for him to even watch Scream 4 because he doesn't know what he wrote and what someone else wrote. So the interesting thing is that Bob Weinstein, basically, was the head of Dimension, which was a subsidiary of Miramax. Bob Weinstein basically begged Wes and Kevin to make another Scream film. He kept coming back to them for like years and years and years, saying, "Is it time? Is it time? Let's make another one. Let's make another one. Let's make another one." Kevin came with a script. You know, they greenlit the script, but then once the film started shooting, he just kept interfering and saying, "Well, I don't like this. I don't like this. I don't like this." And then Aaron Kruger, who'd actually written the screenplay for the third film, did some rewrites, and there ended up being reshoots. Wes Craven, I listened to the commentary. Wes Craven talked about the reshoots. They had originally shot in the summer in Michigan. It was super hot. And then they had to come back in January to do some of the reshoots where like characters are wearing tank tops and like all this other stuff. And they had to like pretend they had to pretend that it wasn't a Michigan winter outside. Kevin Williamson says it's painful for him to watch it. And it's very unfortunate because the studio just kept interfering to the point where like he ended up kind of having bad feelings about the film.
Well, if you're being begged to come back and write something and then they're like, yeah, it's not what we want. It's like, then stop, then just go make your own thing. Leave me alone. Yeah.
One of the best things about this film, I think, is like right from the start, this great opening that Kevin Williamson did, right? Which is the movie within a movie within a movie, which is the best opening, I think, since the first Scream.
Now, I love the reference to Stab 5, which is terrible and about time travel. I'm like, is that why they didn't name this last Scream 5? Because of Stab 5?
That's the one I want to see. That's a movie I want to see, Stab 5, time travel.
If you like this franchise, like there's enough freshness in this to like bring you back and kind of keep you engaged. But, you know, they do bring back all the legacy characters because David Arquette and Courtney Cox and Neve
Which
Campbell
after watching this makes me even madder that they off Dewey in the fifth one. Spoiler alert.
Reading some of the backstories that the original draft of the script had Dewey and Gale have a baby in this,
Yeah.
but they thought it was too unwieldy to bring that into the story, which I could see how it would be.
I mean, obviously there were changes that were made by other writers to Kevin Williamson scripts, but even stuff that he had written that got changed. The initial opening of the story was supposed to be Sydney at a dinner party with her friends, and she gets attacked. She gets stabbed. And you see her like fighting with a killer. There's like a fade out, and then it's like supposed to be like 3 years later.
So she would be in the Drew Barrymore role from the first movie. So she would be the opening scene.
Bob Weinstein didn't like that. He said, come up with something else. And then Kevin came up with this other opening, which was obviously much better because it's so great because they're playing with their own tropes.
It's very meta. It's
What a.
The thing that always gets me about this movie, I always think about the ratings board giving Wes a hard time way back in the first Scream film, 1996, like for Steve's death, right? By the pool, the infamous falling intestines, right? And they're freaking out because the intestines were moving. And then in the intervening years, all the Saw movies have come out and they actually mentioned them in the opening film.
Mm-hmm.
And then you look at Olivia's death, the room is basically lacquered in blood like when it's over. And Wes blames it on his FX guy who apparently loved to throw blood around. But all I could think is probably part of him was like, I'm just going for it. Just try to stop me.
Who made the app for this phone, by the way? Why would you make an app like this?
And why doesn't it exist in real life?
Listen, here's stop answering the freaking phone. This movie would be over in a heartbeat. And don't open the door. You just got done talking about in the Black Phone, the real world implausibility. This implausibility goes out the window in this movie. Like
Black Phone, there's no humor. That's completely grounded in the real world where this is not a funny situation. The Scream movies are a parody of horror movies. So you got to make that allowance that you're watching something that makes fun of other horror movies.
I mean,
and you're in on the joke.
Laughed, though. I don't think I laughed at all.
They're a parody, but also they try to be like
scary themselves, which is,
also to have like, there's also a murder mystery element sort of at the heart of all the films.
And I got that more so in this than I think any of the other. Like I was the first time I saw it and I was kind of disappointed when I watched it again, like, oh, now I know who the killer is.
Once you know who it is, when you watch it the second time, you can see Emma Roberts does some real subtle things that sort of give her away.
As does Rory Culkin.
But I
actually had him tag Charlie.
But I think they're both, the first time you see it, you don't suspect them.
No, well, in Trevor's such a red herring. He runs around in dark clothes and he's jumping out at his girlfriend, and it's like, all right.
And the interesting thing was that Wes had actually shot a ton more scenes with Nico Tortorella, who played Trevor, because they were really trying to set him up as the red herring, and then they were like, he's too much of a red herring.
Because he's a jerk.
Very obviously,
he's a jerk.
Well, so's Gail in this. I didn't like her treatment of Dewey at all.
Well, she's always been a jerk.
But she should have been.
That's expected of Gail. That behavior.
She should have been whacked.
She shouldn't soften over the years, right?
Gail is Gail. What? Woodsboro, I'd be moving out of this town. Like, oh, we're gonna celebrate this? Yeah, I'm out.
But here's the thing: is what I really loved about this. The first viewing is that I was suspecting everyone, and I was convinced that Deputy Judy was the killer the first viewing because she steps out of the shadows.
She's so weird.
Like she is an obsessed fan of Sydney, and she always has been.
Yeah, she acts so weird. I think it's really implied. Couple funny things. Hayden Panettiere had written into her contract. There's a line in her contract saying that she wouldn't die on screen. And if you watch carefully, you'll notice she never stops moving.
I met her once at New York Comic Con years ago at the height of her Heroes popularity, and my buddy brought racing stripes for her to sign. The Zebra Horsey Kid movie, and she was just blown away. She was like, I can't, I don't think I've ever signed one of these. So, but
I just bring that up as a side note, just in case you were interested in things that might happen in the
But
future.
here's the thing: is that they
is that what you were
really.
implying last week? Is this what you're implying?
I think that they give her such dismissal at the end of this movie after she's stabbed. Like, I don't think that they realize what they had here with this character of Kirby, because she is by far the most likable character in this film. Everything that she says, you hang on to it. And I don't think they realize that, because once she's stabbed, regardless of what she put into her contract or not, you don't hear about her again.
No.
You know, she's just forgotten after she's
Half these
stabbed.
characters.
And that that upset me on this viewing, because I didn't really catch that the first viewing, because I was so wrapped up in what's happening with Jill.
Yeah.
Kirby, I really, really, really hope that she comes back.
I guess it's out there. You know what really drove me nuts was that these cops are getting stabbed in the back and they just drop. And yet this other cop gets stabbed in the forehead and he's still able to stumble out of the car, walk around, make a funny quip, and then fall over.
Christina?
Wes actually justified that because he had heard from a friend who was a doctor that somebody came into the emergency room with something embedded in his head and he was still talking. So it's medically possible.
It's also medically possible to survive a stab in the back.
Yes, it is. It is.
So this is okay.
Now, who do we think is more inept? The cops from Black Phone or these two sitting in their cruiser?
Dewey was trying. Oh, those, yeah.
Well, no, I'm not talking about Dewey. I'm not talking about Dewey.
You got to go back to the Black Phone guys. Those guys were just like they were like, let's just go to the little girl. She apparently knows everything that's going on. We don't need to do any super sleuthing. We'll just let her wander the streets on her bike. She'll figure it out.
The other thing that I wanted to mention that I thought was really cute, Hayden Panettiere said during the commentary. The commentary was Wes Craven, Emma Roberts, and Hayden Panettiere. And she said that she tried really hard to find Roger Jackson on set. Because
he's
every
hidden, right,
every movie they bring him in and he actually calls the actors. It's his voice that they hear, even if it's ADR.
It's not an app.
Right. Even if it's ADR in the final version of the story of the film, he calls them so they hear his voice. They don't hear like somebody just reading the line. And she wanted so bad to see him, and she was like squirreling around all over the set trying to find where they had him hidden. She was like, it was like a project.
That is pretty funny.
That's totally
Where's
something
Waldo?
Kirby would do that as well if she was on a movie set.
And
she's got to find the icon.
She just wanted so badly to see him, but she never did. And that was like a thing that Wes has always done, actually, since the first movie, is that Roger Jackson's been on the set. He calls the actors, he does the performance in the Ghostface voice, and then they never see him. So he's always just a voice to them, which I think is effective, because I think it helps you probably as an actor to hear something. You know, it helps you respond, I think, probably in real time. The other thing I thought that was interesting about Roger Jackson's performance in this one is that in the first film, I think you can really tell that he kind of adopts some of the diction of Skeet Ulrich and Matthew Lillard, the way they talk and kind of their performances. And I really noticed, especially this time around, that I feel like he's really talking like Rory Culkin. Like, you know, just
which makes sense. That's great, actually.
And I think it's real subtle. It's real subtle.
See,
but
that stuff is nice.
It's not the same performance in every film, which I think is interesting.
The physicality of it, though, when it's not maybe so much this one, but in that last one, the Scream 5, you've got supposedly one of the killers is a little girl, and yet somehow she's overpowering Dewey and she's taller than he is. Like, because it's not the actors running around in these suits, even though they should be.
No, it's stunt people.
It's a stunt person, right?
Dane Farwell, I think, has been on he was certainly on the first 4 Scream movies. He was actually the stuntman who came up with the knife swipe.
Okay.
The swiping the blood off.
Yeah. How's he text with those gloves on, by the way?
That's probably what he does with a BLT sandwich as well, after he puts the mayo on it.
Oh yeah.
So
he little knife swipe.
That was just instinct, right? And they're like, use it.
Love it.
The one of the scenes that I love is the scene when they go to the Stabathon. It's in the big barn and all the kids are
which
watching
apparently
the
is a secret So why mention it?
There's like 150 kids there.
Well, I'm not going to tell you where it is. Then why'd you bring it up?
I love it when all the kids are shouting at the screen with the lines. I don't even know you and I dislike you already. This is me watching the Scream movies. This is what I do when I watch this. I say the words with the characters. And one of the things that I love, they show it's the same stab footage that you see at the beginning of Scream 2. When Jada Pinkett and Omar Epps' characters go to the movies. But there's one new reveal, which is that it's directed by Robert Rodriguez. And, because they didn't show that title card in the Scream 2 footage. And it turns out Robert Rodriguez actually did direct that.
Did direct those scenes?
They gave him credit like 3 movies later.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, he actually
He's still
did
waiting
it.
for his check.
Now, Christina, is Allison Brie, is that your experience of a book agent?
Oh my gosh. It's so funny. Okay, so this is so funny. She's a publicist. Okay. Most publicists are, number one, a little mellower. Number two, as a professional writer, I do feel it incumbent upon me to say that this is not how contracts work. Nobody holds up a 1-page contract and says, name your price. First of all, every contract I've ever signed has been at least 15 pages long, at least. Yeah, your agent would definitely be involved in that transaction.
This was condensed.
No, things don't work that way. Nobody ever holds
But
up
I would
one
think
sheet of
that
paper.
this is also maybe doesn't hold up to scrutiny, because I think that she would be just the kind of person that Jill would want in her corner. So it's kind of wasted. But her death, she's probably the most hated character in the movie. And her death is the most egregious because she gets thrown off the roof through the roof of the car. So I appreciated that.
Yeah, and in the commentary, it was real interesting. Wes Craven said, something that Alison Brie does in that moment when she's stabbed, though. Most actors, when they're stabbed in the films, they just look shocked, or horrified or whatever. But she gives Ghostface this real weird look of intimacy in that moment, which I had never really noticed until he pointed out. I was like, yeah, he's right. It's very strange and powerful, the look that she gives him in that moment, if you look for it.
Like a come hither look?
Not quite. It is.
Like, thank you.
No, it's weird. It is like this. It's like an intimate moment. It's like a closeness.
Maybe the first time she's been stabbed.
Now, because Hayden is part of this commentary, did they bring up the Kirby's sexuality at all? Because the reason I ask this is because they make an obvious cut when they're in the cinema club, and it's either Rory or the other kid that says the only way to survive a horror movie is to be gay. They completely cut to Kirby immediately with a smile on her face. And then she goes after Charlie at the end. She could be bi. That's part of her mystery. That's part of her allure. But I'm just wondering if they brought it up in the commentary
specifically. I mean, although when Charlie says that in the cinema club, Robbie kind of like moves away from him, like steps like an inch away. So I think it's implied in that moment, that it's him. But no, they did not mention that at all in the commentary. They're mostly talking about like stuff they were doing on set, shooting the different scenes and telling stories. And like one of the things they talked about, and if you watch the gag reel, you'll see this. JP Robinson, who was the prop guy, pranked almost every actor on set. He wore the Ghostface mask and would pop out and
he really stabbed them.
Like they would open a door and he would be there. So in the scene where they're on the phone and Olivia's on the other phone and, Ghostface is on the phone with Kirby and Olivia's watching and he's like, I'm in the closet, and Hayden opens the door and there's nothing in there. Well, there's a scene in the gag reel or JP Robinson pops out wearing the Ghostface mask and Hayden screams and runs across the room. And she said in the commentary that he felt so bad when he saw the expression on her face. He disappeared. He didn't talk to her for a day.
It was just a joke.
I'm so sorry. Apparently, Matthew Lillard also visited the set.
How can you have him on set and not get him in the movie somehow?
Come on, get in there.
And then Rory Culkin in particular was really like starstruck and that he was such a huge fan of his character. And
So this is, star-studded and on its own. We haven't talked about Mary McDonnell yet, who plays Jill's mother. Of course, since Sydney and Jill are cousins, this is Sydney's mom's sister. Now, this was originally going to be played by Lauren Graham of Gilmore Girls, who dropped out. And then, of course, we know Mary McDonnell from Battlestar Galactica.
And Dancing with Wolves.
You expect at some point to hear more info about Sydney's mom, through her sister, but that doesn't really happen. And it's unfortunately more of a disposable character if he just gets it.
Go through the mail slot, by the way.
well, there were many more scenes with Mary McDonnell that were cut. Wes said the script was about 140 pages long. One page is 1 minute of runtime, roughly. So 140 page script is like, it's over a 2.5 hour movie. So there was no way that a horror movie is going to be that long. A lot of stuff was cut out of this.
So we get to this after party at Kirby's house. So this is the almost end of the movie.
Thank
so
God.
Trevor, again, they're really handing him to you on a silver platter as the killer when he comes in, because
You
they got
texted
him.
me.
Yeah. And so then he mysteriously disappears. He's going to go look for Jill. So that gives him time to put on his Ghostface costume, right? So then you have the interaction between Kirby and Charlie. And then it's slowly revealed that this is an homage to the first movie where there's two people in cahoots, that this is a team that's been working together. And that's how Jill can appear certain places when Ghostface is on the phone and so on. And so then we get the heartbreaking stabbing. I'm not going to say death, stabbing of Kirby.
That's right. Just a stabbing. She never stops moving.
Just a flesh wound.
And then the eventual reveal that Jill is the killer. And of course, she does have to off. You cannot trust somebody else when you're planning these serial killer murders. You know that if you're like in cahoots with somebody and you're the complete trusting one, you're going to get killed. And that's what happens to Charlie. Yeah, foolish boy.
It's almost like they've never seen any of the movies before.
Yeah, but she's jealous of Sydney. Jill is the cousin, and then Sydney has been getting all the attention in the family.
She beats a living crap sibling.
It's interesting too, if you watch the whole series, how like this idea of Sydney as the star comes up very early, even in the second film, where Cotton Weary is like, Sydney's always the star, Sydney's the victim, because he's mad because he wants
She's the final girl.
Because he wants his 15 minutes of fame, and she's got this fame that she doesn't want. Even the motivation of Roman in the third one is sort of on the same level. It's like, you're always the center of attention, and she's like, I don't want to be the center of attention. It's like this song that she's singing for like movie after movie after movie, but this idea of being the star is a theme that they came up with pretty early in the series, and I think it gets played out really nicely in this with Jill's
she should be happy she's not associated with us anymore.
And I think it really speaks, and obviously this was on purpose, to this youth culture of even back in 2011 and the 15 minutes of fame that you can try to give yourself online, and that's her whole plan. So she wants her 15 minutes. She wants to be the focal point now. But as you said, she beats herself up really well. It does a total Fight Club on herself.
Completely commits, man. I'm like, wow, this girl's going all in. And she does. She gets her 15 minutes of fame because she's
on the news when she wakes up in the hospital.
A true American hero.
So now here's the great thing is that, and I'm sure that you're going to tell me a little bit more about this, is that the original ending ended in the house. Didn't end in the hospital because they were opening it up for a possible sequel to have Jill in it.
Yeah, there was supposed to be kind of a line where it was like, we have a heartbeat, and you weren't supposed to know like who it was. Like it could have been Sydney, it could have been Kirby, it could have been anybody.
I think Kirby would have lost that. They're not going to kill Sydney.
We got a heartbeat. Not that one, though.
Yeah,
but
it's not that one.
It is funny because then they do the scene in the hospital instead. Before Sydney finishes off Jill, she says, consider this an alternate ending. And of course it is an alternate ending.
I see, that's really, there you go.
And you get that Gary Busey and Lethal Weapon ending.
No.
there was a deleted scene that showed the crime scene where Marnie and Jenny were killed, and it was pretty gory. They ended up cutting it out, but Wes Craven actually appeared for like 1 second as the coroner.
Love the defib to the head, though. That's great.
Clear.
And Deputy Judy survives to come back in Scream.
Now she can be
5. And so do her lemon squares, by the way.
I know. When I saw in Scream 5, when I saw the like lemon squares in the fridge note on the refrigerator, it got a little emotional.
And you know what, Gail? I don't think they taste like ass.
That's
I
right.
really don't.
She got killed in the last one as well, right?
Yeah.
She did.
And I was pretty
This
upset
one just makes me even madder about that last one, though.
I was pretty upset about that because I felt like she was a character who could have carried on Dewey's legacy. Like even if Dewey had died, like she clearly revered him. You know, she was the same type of police officer. She was earnest and she was courageous. You know what I mean? Like the thing about Dewey is he's depicted from the start, you know, from the very first film, he's depicted as a goof. But if you watch his actions, he's always the guy running toward the fire.
Yes.
He never runs away. He's not cowardly in any fashion. He always goes toward the trouble. I
don't think he has the brain capacity to be cowardly. The years have been kinder in terms of critical response to Scream 4. It wasn't like lauded, which it should have been on its release. Fans have really taken it to heart, and Kirby is a big part of that. It wasn't a huge hit. It cost $40 million to make, and it made just shy of $100 million worldwide. So it wasn't what they were expecting. So we haven't had a Scream movie for quite some time until Blumhouse picked it up.
Randy says in the first movie, if it gets too complicated, you lose your target audience. So he's not wrong. Don't F with the original.
Sydney not being in a Scream movie, possibly recasting her. You know,
recasting her is just ridiculous.
Maybe not having her in altogether would be more acceptable. If you had a Kirby come back, if you had a Stu come back.
Yeah.
You get all the second bananas. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I think that recasting would be the worst thing. If they want
we did learn that Sydney had children. Could we do a time jump?
Oh
no, don't bring Patrick Dempsey back.
Scream in space. In space.
Why do you have against Patrick Dempsey?
McDreamy.
You know that Sydney has kids, and you know that she's married to Mark Kincaid, who's the detective from the third film. And my son envisioned this whole scenario where Mark is at home dressed like Rambo, hopped up on Red Bull protecting the kids while Sydney is away. He imagined this whole scene in his head.
So these buckets, I believe, are going to be I don't know. Jeff is unpredictable on this one. He's the loose cannon for this film. But what kind of buckets out of 5 would we give to Scream 4?
So obviously I cannot rank this as high as the first one, which is a 5 bucket for me. The original is still the best, but I'm going to say I like this a lot, and I'm going to say 4.5.
I think I'll go same.
Yeah.
4.5. Yeah.
Wow. I am not attached to this little universe here at all. It's a same old. You know what would have been cool is if they actually filmed like a Clue-like ending where they have multiple people who could be the killer. And depending what theater you went to, you saw it. It's it was Sydney all along. I'm going to give it 3. I can't fish all over it because I know you guys really like this.
You can.
Oh, no.
I did it to Black Phone.
I know, and that was fun, but I don't really have it. It's a Groundhog Day. It's the same movie every time. You know, you've dragged me kicking and screaming into these horror universes, and this one I'm just not. I think I like the 5. I actually like that better, I think.
The thing that I always come back to is I feel like they really put the female characters, they're central in these films. They're not just victims.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
And that's one of the things that I really, really like about this franchise as a whole. Gosh, even the villain in this one, I mean...
Oh, she's a strong character.
Jill, she keeps trying.
I just love the fact
I won't get my 15 minutes of fame.
I love that I could not guess who it was, and I was really invested to see who the killer was first viewing.
Yeah.
And I will always appreciate that when I think fondly back on Scream 4. And of course, Kirby Kirby,
Yeah.
Kirby.
And I do
Kirby.
think that the murder mystery aspect is probably underrated, but it is a part of all the Scream films, trying to figure out who it is under the mask.
Yeah. Maybe I'm just not clever enough to. I can barely guess a Scooby-Doo episode.
Jeff,
so.
let's make a trade.
Yes. Okay.
I'll give you your black phone. You give me Scream 4.
Fair enough. No, let's do it. Yeah. I will say that the only thing scarier than a phone call from Ghostface is that robocall about my car's extented warranty.
Oh my gosh.
They should get Roger
But
Jackson.
if Roger Jackson called me, I'd probably listen to it.
Right.
What's the matter with you? Your warranty's almost up.
Right. Correct.
I'll stab you in your brain.
Oh, boy.
All right, what else did we do this
I
week?
did something.
What'd you do? What'd you do?
I started watching season 3 of Umbrella Academy.
Oh,
Which
I did too.
But Netflix just like dumps this right at the same time that Stranger Things 4 is dropping. So it's like,
Did you finish it? Did you finish it yet?
No, I only got 3 episodes in. Dude, I can't just like sit and watch, what is it, 10 episodes? I watched 3 last night. And I will say, I liked it. And again, you know what? I just got done complaining that this is Groundhog Day. And every season, it's like, well, we screwed up the world and we got to save it again every season. I really, really like the fact that they've addressed the Elliot Page, his transition. And it is an integral part of the storyline. They didn't just throw a wig on this actor and said,
because the same thing happens to Vanya.
Yeah, I don't think that that's true to the comics in any way, shape, or form, but they did.
They address it.
Yes, they did. And there may or may not be a footloose dance off in the first 5 minutes, which cemented the show for me.
See, I'm about halfway through the third season, and I thought it was great coming out of the gate because now the team is back together again. And that was what was sorely missing from season 2. They were all doing their own separate thing. And now they're all together all the time. But it seems like it's just treading water. Like I said, it started off promising, but the more I get into it, the less I like it.
Great. So I got that going for me.
I only ever watched the first season. My husband and son wanted to watch it, and I hated it.
What?
I hated it. I did not like any character. I thought they were all jerks. The only saving grace was I think the guy who plays Diego is super hot. Other than that, I did not want to watch the rest of it. So they've gone forth without me.
So the thing that I did this week is what we're going to be talking about next week. So you can skip me.
It's funny that you say that because I also went to see Elvis this week, but I did watch, we had to arrange it around my son's very strict lifeguarding schedule, but we watched.
Hey, he's saving lives.
We watched Stranger Things.
No spoilers.
I just want to say that is an undertaking.
That's why I have not committed to it.
Of this part 2, the first episode is 85 minutes long, and the second is 2.5 hours long. Like,
just think of it as 4 episodes.
So he came home from lifeguarding on Friday. He goes on Instagram. Someone's going to spoil it for him. So he's crazed to make sure he sees it before somebody spoils it. So we watched the first episode on Friday night, and then we watched half of it Saturday morning before he went to the beach, and the other half Saturday night when he came home from the beach. Block off a lot of time, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So next week, you already know what we're doing. Elvis is in the building with us next week.
Oh, I like it.
But Jeff will not be.
Wait, are you firing me?
You're not fired, but you're taking a self-inflicted sabbatical, apparently.
Self-inflicted. Sometimes family comes first. I love you guys. I really do. And I would have liked to have talked about Elvis.
We'll go see it anyway.
I am leaving
Go see it anyway. So
I don't know if I'm going to have time.
That also is an undertaking, by
yes,
the way.
It is.
That's a long movie. Yeah.
Along with Elvis, this is Spinal Tap. I don't know if I have to justify that or explain that.
No.
This episode's going to 11.
Although I did think, I know I was the one who brought up Spinal Tap, and I still think we should do it. But I did think afterwards that maybe we missed an opportunity to do Bye Bye Birdie because, Conrad Birdie is based on Elvis. And Margaret's in it, who was in Viva Las Vegas. And I was like, we should have done Bye Bye Birdie. But it's okay. We can do This is Spinal Tap.
All right. So that is next week. Elvis.
Oh, awesome.
And this is Spinal Tap. We do realize that by the time next week's episode drops that Thor will be in theaters, but do not worry. We will be covering Thor just a little bit later. give all you the chance to see it and come back and listen to our take. Thank you for listening, as always.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Hey, everybody. If you like what you just heard, be sure to follow TMI Confessionals of the Nerd Kind on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, or whatever you listen to your favorite podcasts on. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and then share it with your fellow movie nerd friends. It means the world to us and helps our listenership grow.
You can also find us on all of the socials, Instagram and Twitter at TMI_podcast 2018. We're on Facebook and YouTube as well. Just look for the Popcorn Bucket.
You can help support this show by visiting our TeePublic page for some TMI branded goodies such as hoodies, t-shirts, mugs, and stickers. tpublic.com/TMI Confessionals, all one word.
A 5-star review would be incredibly nice as well. I'm just saying.
Thanks again for listening. We truly appreciate you. Be sure to come back next week. We'll save some popcorn for you. We saw quite a few trailers. We saw a trailer for Bodies, Bodies, Bodies.
Yes. Actually,
Really?
That looks interesting.
I didn't see it.